The galaxy was a vast place, filled with many different kinds of alien species. Some were huge and powerful, while others were small and cunning. The aliens lived in peace most of the time, but they also fought each other when the need arose. They ruled the stars, their ships and weapons dominating the skies. They believed that no species could ever challenge them, especially not humans. For many years, humans were considered weak in the eyes of the galaxy. They had only recently learned how to travel between stars. Their ships were small, their weapons were basic, and they had no grand alliances with other species. In the eyes of the aliens, humans were nothing special. But this was about to change. One quiet evening, in a remote part of the galaxy, a small high-tech human warship called the Resolute appeared on the radar of a powerful alien fleet. The ship was on a direct path toward their territory. The fleet commander, Zukarn, a towering figure from the Scar race, sat in his command chair aboard his massive flagship. He looked at the alert with a mixture of confusion and amusement. "What is this? A human ship?" Zukarn scoffed, shaking his head. What could they possibly want here? His officers, who had never seen a human ship before, looked at each other in disbelief. Zukarn's fleet had fought off many strong enemies, but humans were considered unworthy of notice. They were far from the top of the food chain, and their ships were tiny compared to the massive war vessels the aliens usually faced. Surely, one human ship would be no threat. "Send a message. Let them know they are in Scar territory," Zukarn ordered, waving his hand dismissively. "They'll turn around, just like the others." His communications officer sent a warning signal to the Resolute, demanding that the ship leave the area immediately, but there was no reply. An hour passed, then another. Still, no response. "Are they ignoring us?" Zukarn asked, growing impatient. "Do they not understand who we are?" Before anyone could answer, a bright flash lit up the void of space. Zukarn's flagship shook as an explosion rocked the outer layers of its shields. His crew scrambled to assess the damage, but they couldn't find the source of the attack. It came from nowhere, as if the Resolute had appeared out of thin air. Zukarn growled. "What is going on? How did they do that?" The Resolute had not launched any visible weapons. It was just there, suddenly striking without warning. The alien officers looked at their scanners, trying to make sense of the situation. "We can't track them, Commander. It's like they vanished and reappeared right on top of us," an officer reported. "They're moving too fast for us to engage properly." The Scar fleet, confident in their power, began to panic. How could a single human ship move like this? It wasn't supposed to be possible. They tried to get a lock on the Resolute, but every time they tried, it disappeared and reappeared somewhere else. The human ship wasn't just fast, it was clever. Zukarn's eyes narrowed. He had underestimated the humans, and now they were showing him what they were capable of. He ordered his fleet to attack, launching missile after missile, but they missed. The Resolute wasn't in front of them anymore. It had moved again. "What kind of ship is this?" Zukarn muttered under his breath, still trying to make sense of it all. "This isn't normal. This isn't right." The humans were playing a game they knew all too well. Surprise and deception. While the aliens were focused on finding their ship, the Resolute launched another wave of attacks, hitting the alien ships in weak spots. The human warship used their small size to their advantage, dodging and weaving between larger alien vessels, striking them when they least expected it. A sudden explosion lit up the dark expanse of space. One of the alien cruisers had been hit in its engine room, and it was quickly falling apart. Zukarn watched in disbelief as more alien ships began to fall. The humans were fighting like they had nothing to lose. "They're not running," Zukarn whispered, now fully realizing the danger. "They're fighting back." Why? The Resolute was not fighting for glory, or for territory, or even for riches. It was fighting for survival. The humans had learned to fight with the most powerful weapon they had, their minds. Zukarn stood up, fury rising in his chest. "Send reinforcements. We cannot let this human ship get any further. We will crush them, or they will crush us. But deep inside, Zukarn knew that he had made a terrible mistake. The humans weren't like any enemy he had ever faced. They were not going to back down. They had come to fight, and they would not stop until the war was won. The Scar fleet had underestimated humans. After the first attack from the Resolute, they knew something had gone terribly wrong. But what the Scar didn't realize was that the humans had been preparing for this day for a long time. The human race was not always strong. Thousands of years ago, humans were weak. They fought each other in endless wars, and their world was on the brink of destruction. But then something changed. They had no choice but to unite. They realized that if they didn't come together, they would never survive. And so they did. Slowly but surely, the people of Earth laid aside their differences and formed one world government, focused only on survival and progress. They began to rebuild their world, using the mistakes of the past to fuel their future. Over the years, humans became resourceful. They learned to survive in ways no other species could understand. They adapted quickly to new technologies and developed new ways of thinking. What they lacked in strength, they made up for with determination and cleverness. The greatest minds on Earth came together, creating weapons and ships that could rival even the most powerful alien fleets. But it wasn't just the weapons that made humanity special. It was their spirit. Humans had learned how to push through impossible odds, using their intelligence and willpower to overcome any obstacle. Back aboard the Resolute, Commander Ariel Williams sat in her chair, staring at the screens in front of her. She had been through many battles in her life, but nothing like this. The Scar were strong, and they were angry. Yet something in her knew that they would not win, not against humanity. "Aria," said Lieutenant Foster, one of her most trusted officers, "we've hit them hard, but they'll be back with everything they've got. We need a new plan." Aria looked up, her face calm but serious. She had always been the leader that others trusted in moments like this. "We knew this was coming," she said quietly. "It's not just about fighting with weapons. We need to outsmart them." Foster nodded. "But how?" "They have more firepower, more ships, more everything." Aria smiled, but there was a fire in her eyes. "That's where they're wrong. We've learned to fight smarter, not harder. We'll show them the one thing they've never expected from humans, our ability to adapt." While the Scar fleet scrambled to regroup, Aria and her crew were already planning their next moves. The key to their success wasn't just the advanced tech on their ship. It was the knowledge that humans could think on their feet, adjust to any situation, and keep pushing forward no matter how difficult things got. Back on Earth, scientists and engineers worked nonstop, sending messages to the fleet with new strategies, new ideas, and new technology. The warships, while not as large or as powerful as the Scars, were equipped with human design tech that no alien had ever seen before. One of these innovations was the human stealth technology. It was a secret weapon, designed to make their ships invisible to enemy sensors. The Scar thought they could track human ships easily, but they had no idea how wrong they were. The Resolute could disappear in plain sight and strike from unexpected angles. "We have one shot at this," Aria said, rallying her team. "We use the Scar's own strategy against them. They expect us to attack head-on, but that's not how we fight. We hit them where they least expect it, and we hit them fast." Her words were sharp and clear, and the crew trusted her completely. Humanity had survived the worst of times, and they had learned how to fight back. They didn't need the biggest ships or the strongest weapons. They needed their minds, their creativity, and their unity. In the alien command room, Zukarn stood in front of a large map, staring at the human ship's movements. His fleet was in chaos. The human warship had been striking their supply lines, taking out their communication systems, and causing damage from places they couldn't even locate. It was as if the Resolute was everywhere and nowhere at the same time. "How are they doing this?" Zukarn growled, slamming his fist down on the table. "This isn't a fight. It's a game, and we're losing." His officers tried to analyze the human ship's tactics, but nothing added up. The humans were small, but they fought like they were giants. They didn't play by the same rules. They didn't care about power. They cared about winning. The more Zikarn studied, the more he realized that humanity was different from any species he had ever encountered. The humans had something that no other race in the galaxy had: the drive to keep fighting, even when all seemed lost. They would never stop, no matter how many times they were knocked down. Back aboard the Resolute, Area gave the order to launch the next phase of their plan. They were going to strike directly at the heart of the Scar fleet, using their stealth technology to slip past the alien defenses and hit them where it hurt the most. The Scar wouldn't know what hit them. As the ship moved into position, Area looked out at the stars. It was just the beginning. The humans had more surprises up their sleeves. They weren't going to lose. Not this time. The battle had started, but the humans were far from finished. After the first few surprises, the Scar fleet was furious. They had underestimated the Resolute and its crew. But now, they were ready. They would crush the humans, they thought. They would show the galaxy who really held power. The Scar flagship, Karnak, was the largest ship in the fleet. It had weapons that could destroy entire fleets in a single shot. The Scar had always been confident in their strength. But now, they were becoming desperate. On the Resolute, Commander Area Williams stood tall, her eyes fixed on the screen. She had always known this battle would come, but now that it was here, it felt even more intense. The Scar were stronger, faster, and better equipped. But the humans had something the Scar didn't have: a secret weapon that wasn't just in their technology, but in their hearts. "We've got one chance to hit them hard," Area said, her voice calm, but filled with purpose. "We can't waste it." The crew worked quickly, following her orders without question. The Resolute moved through space with speed and precision, darting between asteroids and debris, avoiding the Scar's long-range weapons. They knew that if they didn't act fast, the Scar would destroy them. "Enemy fleet is coming into range," Lieutenant Foster reported from the control panel. "We can't outrun them much longer." Area nodded. She had expected this. "No, we don't need to outrun them. We need to outsmart them." The crew prepared for the first wave of attack. The Scar ships were closing in, their weapons ready to fire. The humans needed to strike before they were overwhelmed. "Prepare the stealth system," Area ordered. "Once they're in range, we vanish. We need to be a ghost in the void." The Resolute's advanced stealth technology was their key to surviving this fight. The ship had the ability to cloak itself from enemy sensors, making it almost invisible. The Scar had no idea how to track the Resolute. The humans had used this trick before, and it had worked. Now, they were about to use it again. As the Scar fleet drew closer, Area took a deep breath. This was it. The next few minutes would determine everything. "Now," she said sharply. The Resolute vanished into the shadows of space, its stealth systems kicking in. For a moment, the Scar fleet was confused. They couldn't see the human ship anymore. The sensors flashed red as they tried to lock onto something, anything. But the Resolute was nowhere to be found. The Scar officers shouted orders, scrambling to locate the human warship. But they were too late. The Resolute had already moved into position. Area's eyes locked onto the screen. The first target was a Scar cruiser, one of their mid-sized ships. It wasn't as powerful as the flagship, but it was still dangerous, and it was vulnerable. "Fire," Area commanded. The Resolute's weapons sprang to life. A precise beam of energy shot out from the ship, striking the cruiser's engine room. The Scar ship shuddered, its engines sparking and exploding. The cruiser was out of the fight. The Scar didn't know how to react. The Resolute had struck again, and this time, they couldn't even see it coming. The humans had used their cloaking technology to sneak past the fleet's defenses and attack from an unexpected angle. Direct hit on their engine. Lieutenant Foster said with a grin, "They're down. We're good to go. But there was no time to celebrate. The Scar were furious, and they began to regroup. Their massive flagship, Karnak, turned its guns toward the human ship. It fired a series of heavy blasts, lighting up the darkness of space. The shots were powerful, and if they hit, they could destroy the Resolute in an instant. Brace for impact, Aria shouted. The Resolute dodged and weaved, moving like a ghost in the darkness. The Scar shots missed, but just barely. It was clear that they were starting to take the humans seriously. They could no longer just rely on their size and strength. The next wave of attacks was more coordinated. The Scar began to use their own cloaking devices, trying to match the humans' stealth technology. But it wasn't enough. The Resolute was faster, smarter, and already moving to its next target. Aria's voice was steady, but her eyes were sharp. Target the flagship. Let's make them pay for underestimating us. The Resolute disappeared again, and this time, it reappeared behind the Scar flagship. The humans were closing in on their biggest target yet. The Scar flagship Karnak was a beast, but it had one big weakness. Its rear defenses were much weaker than the front. The crew fired everything they had. A series of missiles flew through space, hitting the Karnak's vulnerable spots. Sparks flew as the Scar flagship took damage. The Scar officers screamed in panic, trying to repair the damage, but it was too late. The humans were relentless. Aria watched with a grim smile. Keep hitting them. We've got them on the ropes. The battle raged on. The Scar were starting to panic. They had never faced an enemy like this before. They couldn't outsmart the humans, and they couldn't keep up with their speed. They were losing. The Resolute had struck again, and the Scar were beginning to realize they might have made a huge mistake. The humans weren't just a small, weak species. They were a force to be reckoned with, and the Scar were finally feeling the full power of humanity's determination. The Resolute was doing damage, but the Scar weren't ready to give up. The humans had surprised them once, but now the Scar were angry. They had their pride, their power, and their strength. The Scar were not going to let one human ship destroy everything they had built. On the Scar flagship Karnak, Commander Karn was losing his patience. His fleet had been hurt, and his pride was wounded. The humans had shown that they could fight, but he believed that the Scar were far too strong to be beaten by one ship. Get them. Skarn roared, slamming his fist on the control panel. We will show them what true power is. His officers scrambled to follow his orders. The Scar had their best weapons, their strongest ships, and their largest fleet. They had never faced an enemy like this before, but Karn was determined. He would not let the humans win. He called for reinforcements from every corner of the galaxy. The humans have taken out our smaller ships, Skarn's lieutenant reported. But we still have the Karnak. We still have our strength. Skarn nodded. We'll focus everything on that human ship. No more tricks. We attack them head-on. It's time to end this. The Scar fleet adjusted their positions, preparing to launch their final assault. Every ship in the fleet was ready. The Karnak aimed its weapons directly at the Resolute, ready to fire everything it had. Back on the Resolute, Commander Aria Williams was fully aware of the danger. The Scar were angry now, and they were coming at them with everything they had. Their attack would be strong, powerful, and relentless. But Aria wasn't scared. She knew what the humans were capable of. They could face anything. Brace yourselves, Aria said to her crew. We'll have to be quick. The Scar are coming for us, and they won't stop. Lieutenant Foster looked up at her. We're ready, Commander. We just need to keep moving. We can't let them lock onto us. Aria nodded. The humans' greatest weapon was their speed. They weren't the biggest or the strongest, but they could outmaneuver any enemy. The Scar were used to power, not speed, and that was their weakness. The Resolute zipped through space, darting between asteroids and debris. The Scar fired blast after blast, but they couldn't hit their target. The human ship was too fast. slipping through the alien's grasp like a shadow. Every time the Scar thought they had it, the Resolute was gone, moving to a new position. The Karnak continued to fire. Zakarn watched in frustration as the human ship danced around their attacks. It was like trying to catch smoke with your bare hands. "Why won't it stay still?" Zakarn screamed. "We're losing. We need to hit them now." His officers tried to adjust the fleet's targeting systems, but they were getting more and more frustrated. The humans were simply too fast. The Scar had the power, but they lacked the precision needed to land a hit on the Resolute. Meanwhile, Aria and her crew were planning their next move. They had to stop the Scar, and they needed to hit them where it hurt. The Scar were tough, but they had one weakness: their command ship. The Karnak was their heart. If they could take it out, the rest of the fleet would fall apart. "We're going in," Aria said. "Prepare the weapons. We'll make our move while they're distracted." The Resolute moved closer to the Karnak, dodging blasts and missiles as it did. The Scar were too focused on hitting the human ship to notice the Resolute was slowly getting closer to the flagship. The human ship moved like a shadow in the dark, just out of reach of the Scar's most powerful weapons. "Now," Aria ordered. The crew of the Resolute fired everything they had, sending missiles and energy beams toward the Karnak. The Scar flagship's shields were strong, but not strong enough. The blasts hit their target, damaging key systems in the alien ship. Zakarn's eyes widened in horror as he saw the damage reports. What? How did they get so close? "All ships, focus on the Resolute. Protect the Karnak at all costs." But it was too late. The Resolute had already delivered another powerful strike. The Scar flagship began to shake violently. Sparks flew from the command room, and alarms rang through the halls of the ship. "Command systems failing," one officer yelled. "The Karnak is losing power." Zakarn's face twisted in rage and disbelief. The humans had done it again. They had struck right where it hurt, and now the Karnak was crippled. "Fall back. All ships, fall back," Zakarn screamed. But the damage had already been done. The Scar were no longer in control. The Resolute had shown them that even the mightiest fleet could be defeated by human intelligence and determination. As the Scar scrambled to recover, Aria knew that the battle was far from over. The Scar were still powerful, but now they knew what the humans were capable of. And they were beginning to understand that this war was not just about firepower. It was about brains, speed, and the will to never give up. The humans had begun their fight, and they wouldn't stop until the Scar were defeated. The battle was far from over. The Scar had lost their greatest weapon, the Shadowborn, but they were not ready to give up. Despite their heavy losses, they still had the Karnak, the flagship of their entire fleet, and as long as that ship remained intact, they would fight until the very end. Aria Williams stood at the command center of the Resolute, watching the screens closely. The Scar were regrouping. Their fleet might be damaged, but they were still a powerful enemy. Aria knew this would be the toughest fight yet. "We've damaged their fleet," Lieutenant Foster said, his voice tense. "But the Karnak is still intact. If we don't take it out now, they'll rebuild and come back stronger." Aria nodded. "We take the Karnak down today, or this war will never end." The Resolute moved into position, dodging blasts from the remaining Scar ships. The Karnak loomed in front of them, its guns still powerful despite the damage it had taken. The Scar flagship was the heart of their fleet, and without it, the rest of the Scar forces would be lost. "We need to strike now," Aria said, her voice calm but determined. "We can't wait any longer." The crew quickly got to work. The Resolute was fast and agile, but the Karnak was huge, with powerful shields that would be difficult to break. They had one chance to make it count. "Activate cloaking," Aria ordered. "We'll get close, then strike at the weak spots." The Resolute disappeared into the darkness of space, its cloaking system making it invisible to the Scar. The Karnak fired blindly at the space around it, trying to hit the human ship. but the Resolute was already moving, already in position for its next attack. "We're in range," Lieutenant Foster said, "ready to fire." Arya took a deep breath. She could feel the weight of the moment. If they missed, if they didn't hit the Karnak hard enough, the Scar would have another chance to retaliate, and the Resolute was running out of time. "Fire," Arya commanded. The Resolute unleashed a powerful energy blast, hitting the Karnak in one of its vulnerable spots. The Scar flagship shuddered from the impact, but its shields held strong. The blast had done some damage, but not enough to take the ship down. "Shields are still holding," Foster reported. "We need to hit harder." Arya's mind raced. They had to find another way to break through the Karnak's defenses. If they couldn't get past the shields, the Karnak would tear them apart with its powerful weapons. "There's one more option," Arya said, her eyes sharp. "We can target the Karnak's command center. If we take that out, the rest of the ship will fall." Foster looked at her, his face filled with concern. "Commander, that's risky. The Karnak's command center is heavily protected." "I know," Arya replied. "But it's our only shot. We're out of time." The crew worked quickly, making the necessary adjustments to the Resolute's weapons. The Scar flagship was closing in on them, its massive guns ready to fire. But the humans had a plan. The Resolute moved in closer to the Karnak, this time staying just out of reach of its weapons. "Prepare for a direct hit," Arya said. "We'll go in close and strike before they can react." With one last surge of speed, the Resolute darted forward, appearing right in front of the Karnak. The Scar didn't have time to react. In a split second, the Resolute fired a direct shot at the heart of the Karnak, targeting its command center. The blast struck true. The Scar flagship shook violently as the explosion tore through its central core. Sparks flew from the ship's command room. The lights flickered. The Karnak was losing power. "No, this can't be." Skarn's voice crackled over the comms, filled with disbelief and fear. The Karnak systems began to fail, and with it, the Scar's entire fleet. The remaining ships no longer had leadership. Without the Karnak, they were disorganized and vulnerable. Arya watched as the Karnak's shields flickered and failed. The massive flagship was drifting helplessly, and the Scare fleet was quickly falling apart. "We did it," Foster said, his voice filled with awe. But Arya didn't allow herself to relax. The battle wasn't over. The Karnak was still a dangerous ship, and the Scar were not known for giving up easily. "Don't celebrate yet," Arya warned. "We've won a big battle, but we still need to finish this." The Resolute continued to move, dodging fire from the remaining Scar ships. With their command ship crippled, the Scare fleet began to fall into chaos. The remaining ships were easy targets for the Resolute. The Scar had lost their leadership, and without it, they were no match for the human ship. It didn't take long before the last of the Scar ships were destroyed, scattered across the battlefield. The Karnak's massive hull finally cracked, and the flagship exploded in a burst of energy. The Scar fleet was no more. The Resolute hovered in the silence of space, the battle over. The Scar had been defeated, and the humans had won. But the cost had been high. Many lives had been lost on both sides, and the scars of the battle would remain for years to come. Arya stood at the command center, staring out at the wreckage of the Scar fleet. She knew this wasn't the end of the war, but it was a huge victory. Humanity had shown the galaxy that they were a force to be reckoned with, and they weren't going anywhere. "We've done it," Arya said quietly. "But the fight isn't over. This is just the beginning." The battlefield was silent now. The wreckage of the Scare fleet drifted through space, a testament to the fierce battle that had just taken place. The Karnak, once a symbol of the Scar Empire's strength, was nothing but a broken hulk. The Resolute hovered nearby, its crew weary but victorious. The war, at least this part of it, was over. Arya Williams stood on the bridge, her eyes focused on the floating debris outside the ship. She couldn't help but feel a sense of relief, but there was also something else, the weight of the future. The humans had won this fight. But what came next? "Commander," Lieutenant Foster said, his voice breaking the silence. "We've won. The Scare fleet is completely destroyed. There's no way they can recover from this." Arya nodded, but her expression was serious. "It's over for now, but this war isn't just about winning battles. It's about making sure this never happens again." The Resolute had become a symbol for humanity. It wasn't just a ship, it was a message. The Scar had learned the hard way that the humans would not bow down. They would not be crushed. And now, the rest of the galaxy would know the same. "We've lost a lot of good people," Arya said quietly. "We can't forget that. But we also have a chance to build something new. Something better." Foster looked at her, his face filled with respect. "The Scar may be gone, but they're not the only threat out there. We've shown the galaxy that we can fight, but now we need to show them that we can lead." Arya turned to face him, her gaze steady. "And we will. But first, we need to make sure the Scar don't return. We need to protect Earth and every other human colony from future threats." The crew of the Resolute had fought hard, and now they were ready to take the next step. The war had been brutal, but humanity had proven its strength. They had defeated the Scar and protected their people. But what came next was the real challenge: creating a future of peace, one where they wouldn't have to fight to survive. "We need to send a message to the rest of the galaxy," Arya said, her voice firm. "Humanity is here, and we will stand tall. The Scar thought they could crush us. They were wrong." Foster nodded, his expression determined. "What do you want to do, Commander?" "We reach out to every colony, every planet," Arya said. "We tell them what we've done and make sure they know that humanity is not to be underestimated. It's time for a new era." Arya knew it wouldn't be easy. The galaxy had always been a dangerous place, filled with powerful enemies and dark secrets. But now, humanity had earned the respect of the galaxy. They had proven that they could survive, fight, and win. Back on Earth, news of the victory spread quickly. People cheered, celebrated, and mourned the loss of those who had died in the battle. But more than that, they felt a sense of hope. For the first time in a long while, it felt like humanity had a future worth fighting for. The leaders of Earth held a meeting to discuss the next steps. Arya was invited to speak. She stood before a room filled with politicians, military leaders, and scientists. The weight of the moment was heavy, but she knew that what she said here would shape the future of humanity. "The Scar are defeated," Arya began. "But we cannot afford to be complacent. We have shown the galaxy what we are capable of, but we must remember that we are just beginning to build our place in this universe. We must be strong, not just in battle, but in diplomacy, in science, in every way possible. Our survival depends on it." There was a pause as the room absorbed her words. Then, one by one, the leaders began to speak. "We need to focus on rebuilding," one of them said. "We need to invest in technology, strengthen our defenses, and ensure that we are ready for anything." Another leader spoke up. "We need to form alliances. The galaxy is vast, and we will need friends if we are to thrive." Arya nodded. "Exactly. We can't fight every battle alone. But we also need to make sure that Earth and our colonies are safe. We need to protect our people, and that means taking the fight to any enemy that threatens us." And so, the new era began. Humanity was no longer a species on the fringes of the galaxy. They were a force to be reckoned with, a species that had fought and won against an overwhelming enemy. But the victory was just the beginning. Humanity's future was theirs to shape. The Resolute would return to Earth, but Arya knew that her job wasn't finished. The battles in space may have ended, but the real work, the work of building a new era, was just beginning. As the ship made its way back home, Arya looked out at the stars. She knew the road ahead would be long and difficult, but humanity had proven that they were capable of anything. And no matter what came next, they would face it together. The new era had begun.